Let's talk to Ella and see what she makes of it all. Ella, very good afternoon to you.
Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going all right. I don't know whether you've seen Are You Being Served? I don't know whether you think this professor's joke about lingerie in a lift is particularly amusing. But, I mean, you know, really? Do we need to get upset about this kind of stuff?
No, absolutely not. I genuinely cannot believe how humorless the woman who complained about Richard Ned Lebow's joke is. It's astonishing that she has taken it this far. I mean, you could write a sketch show about it. The idea that you would try and get someone. I mean, she's.
In fact, we probably should tell the listeners exactly what what he did say and what happened to him. So he was in a lift at a conference. I mean, again, the irony that at a conference, I think, was about sort of international peace studies or conflict resolution.
Right.
He's a 76-year-old professor in a lift, made a joke about pressing the button to go up to the 7th floor or something, and said lingerie on the 7th, which of course is ting ting from fans of from Are You Being Served. Simona Sharoni, 57, a professor of women's and gender studies in Merrimack College, Massachusetts, and a colleague overheard him and reported him. So didn't just say that's, said nothing at the time. She says she was too stunned to say anything, but reported him, and it's got all official.
But I mean, who do you report these things to? I mean, if I heard a joke in a lift, I wouldn't know who to report it to, Ella.
No, you shouldn't report it to anyone. And the fact that she didn't say anything at the time, that's not an issue either. I mean, nothing that he did was wrong.
Right.
And what's far worse than sort of being, the worst thing that she could have done was felt slightly uncomfortable about it, right? And I think even that would have been too prudish for words. But what people like Simona seem to want is a humorless world, is one where you cannot crack jokes, where you cannot take risks, where you cannot have a laugh with each other. I mean, it's a great advert, I'm afraid, for women, the kind of people who run women and gender studies, which has become this, which should be something quite serious.
Yeah.
It should be something quite serious, but it's become this farcical kind of. It's like it's like the word police.
Yeah.
I mean, and what is she trying to say, that women can't handle this? That women can't handle having a joke? I know many bawdy women who have a great laugh with their male colleagues, who have fun. I also know women who are able to handle it when guys say things that are out of line.
Yeah.
This is just, I mean, the fact that this is blown up shows how far a lot of this sort of panic about the relationship between men and women has gotten, and to the fact where a comment and a joke in a lift can be taken this far. I mean, I'm laughing at it. Actually, you could kind of cry as well.
You could.
By saying this.
Well, because it does seem to be a lot worse in the kind of halls of academia than it is anywhere else, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, but this is the thing. It's totally out of touch with real life. If you got into the lift at a department store, anywhere else in pretty much in society, people make jokes, they talk, and they have a laugh, and people cross lines, and all sorts of different types of behaviour happens, and people get on with it. No one sort of, for me, to report someone to effectively their boss is something huge. That is a really big deal. And, I think that her colleagues should be having a look at her and saying, what kind of workplace solidarity can I trust you? Or if
I love the fact that he has refused. So basically, what she did, they were all at this big conference in San Francisco, the International Studies Association, the ISA. She made a formal complaint to the ISA about this joke that he had made in the lift, and the ISA kind of agreed with her and demanded that he apologised, and he has refused to apologise. Now, of course, if he had apologised, it all would have gone away. But he quite rightly has said he didn't do anything wrong, and by apologising, he's admitting that he did do something
exactly.
wrong. So I love that. And he also made this lovely comment saying that the international relations scholars, which is what they are, know that dialogue is the first step in addressing conflict and coercion the last. Yet ISA went right to coercion at the outset. So he's made a brilliant political point there as well.
I mean, fair play to him. It's very, very seldom that you see the kind of thing is people say something, someone says, oh, you can't say that, and then they make a grovelling apology. And I hate that even more than the kind of people who are taking offence. I hate this fact that people just fold at the first moment that someone demands an apology. So I'm really glad that he's coming out and saying this, because it takes more people with a bit of common sense to say, I'm absolutely not going to be pinned as some kind of horrible, evil person.
But the trouble is, though,
doing a very normal interaction.
Presumably, it's a classic dad gag, right? You just it was just a light-hearted moment from your point of view.
Precisely, and a means of alleviating any slight claustrophobia you might feel in a very crowded lift.
Okay, so I mean, how many people were in the lift?
Quite a few.
And what was the reaction when your gag was uttered?
Well, I think a few people chuckled.
Yeah,
as they should.
And presumably, you just walked out there and thought nothing more of it.
Correct.
And take me through what happened next.
Well, 2 days later, I received an email from the executive director of the International Studies Association telling me that a professor of gender and women's studies had lodged a complaint against me for sexual harassment.
Oh, my gosh!
They included her complaint, and she alleged that she was in the front of the elevator, and she nevertheless alleged she could see a smirk on my face. How could she even know I was in the lift if she was in the front? And that my buddies all laughed. Well, I knew nobody else on the lift, and she certainly didn't know whether I knew anyone or not. I wrote back to the ISA, and I said, surely this is a frivolous complaint, and I hope that you will deal with it accordingly. The director wrote back, and he said, oh, no, this is going to the ethics committee.
The ethics committee?
I sent in the ethics committee of the association. At that point, I sent an email to the professor who complained, saying, I'm terribly sorry if I offended you in any way. It wasn't my intent. I explained, because I had since learned she had not grown up in the United States, that she was from Romania, the context in which my remark took on meaning, that it wasn't in any way directed against women. And I suggested that by making a complaint as frivolous as this, she was actually damaging the women's movement, who needs to foreground serious complaints and injustices against women. She lodged a second complaint upon receipt of that email with the ISA. Their executive committee, then approved by the ethics committee, approved by the executive committee, then charged me with 2 ethical violations. My remark in the lift, which they described as inappropriate and offensive, and my equally inappropriate and offensive email to the professor in question.
Right. So after that, you must have kind of thought you were living in, I don't know, the Truman Show or something.
My wife and I, and ironically, as you announced, my wife teaches a course on this.
Yeah.
We both looked at each other, and we were absolutely amazed. So, too, I should add, were many members of the International Studies Association, including large numbers of both senior and junior women who wrote to ISA complaining about their judgment against me and arguing that it was damaging not only to me but to the women's movement.
And where do things stand now, Professor?
Well, I have a right of appeal. I submitted an appeal on Friday. I'm hoping that cooler heads prevail, that the association reverses itself, and if they do, I'll ask them to make that retraction public and to change their procedures to make sure, because as they now stand, what is defined as offensive is all in the eyes of the person who feels offended. That gives anybody the right to say these things. Just imagine, had I said evolution in the lift and some creationist was offended, he or she could have lodged with equal grounds a complaint against me to the association.
Now that raises an important issue. Do you think that we're I mean, we talk about snowflakes a lot in kind of society now, that people are a bit too thin-skinned and a bit too quick to kind of to cry foul. Is that how you feel about a lot of things, or is this just a kind of isolated incident?
Let's step back from the incident and look at the broader issue. The broader issue is that there's always contention in society about what's proper to say and what's not proper to say.
Yeah.
And there are shifting opinion shifts on this matter. I mean, it used to be perfectly acceptable to make unpleasant jokes about minorities. That's no longer acceptable. I mean, it's not punishable, but it's not acceptable. So there has to be a dialogue. So if somebody feels aggrieved, they certainly have the right to express their opinion and to try to engage others in dialogue about it. But what's happened here is she moved directly to coercion, and so did the association. And that's wrong, and it's doubly ironic because in the field of international relations, we all know that when conflicts arise, you don't go to coercion first. You try dialogue, and you look for ways of either resolving or finessing the issues at hand.
How do you feel about all this now? I mean, how do you feel towards this lady? I mean, you sound very relaxed about it, but it's gone very far.
Well, the woman, other people have subsequently done some research on her for me, and I've been informed she's been fired from her last 3 jobs, that she has problems. This is not the first time she's raised such complaints. I feel sorry for her.